Small-scale fisheries are very important in my area. My area covers the countries of Senegal, the Gambia, Mauritania, Guinea, Bissau Guinea, Cape Verde, and Sierra Leone. So I work for the Sub-Regional Fisheries Commission, and all those states that I just listed are members of the commission. Small-scale fisheries has been identified as a main priority issue for the Commission. We have developed a protocol, and we're going to be addressing the issue of small-scale fisheries. But in general sense, small-scale fisheries has been identified in all those member states as a priority in their strategic document. It represents about 90% of the fishing effort in Senegal, for example. It contributes up to 47% of all landings in the sub-region in those 7 member states. The total harvest in fisheries in the 7 member states is about 1.5 million metric tons, and the small-scale fisheries account for almost 600 metric tons, which is 600 to 700 metric tons, which is very, very significant. So those are the figures. In terms of economic contribution in some countries, it represents a significant portion of the GDP. It contributes to livelihood. It creates employment. More than 1 million people are employed in this subsector in the sub-region. And when I say more than 1 million, I'm talking about direct employment and indirect employment. So along the whole value chain. So it's a very, very important, very significant sector for our sub-region. The guidelines are very important. They create a framework that allow people maybe to define a little bit what is small-scale fisheries, because at the moment we're just characterizing the small-scale fisheries, and I'm not sure even if the guideline will help in defining the small-scale fisheries, but at least it can pinpoint to what we need to look for when we characterize the small-scale fisheries, whether we're looking at the fishermen, knowledge, whether we're looking at the place where he lives, whether we're looking at the type of canoe he's using, whether we're looking at the type of gears he's using, whether we're looking at the areas where he's fishing. All those elements will contribute to addressing the issues, to characterize basically the small-scale fisher. Now, the guidelines provide that framework where we can look at also other issues in terms of value chain addition, in terms of property rights, in terms of human rights issues, but those are just what I call directives or guidelines. Now, we as an organization, what we can do is to take those directives and guidelines and try to incorporate them into the rules and regulations of our member states, so that people can respect what is prohibited, and people also can use those guidelines to improve fishery management. At the moment, we just signed what we call a convention on minimal access conditions. We had all the ministers of our member state that came together in June, and that they agreed on different rules of access. And those rules, for the first time, take in account the issues of small-scale fishers that has never been accounted in the past. So we are developing now a protocol that will be appended to that convention on minimal access conditions, and that protocol will be specially developed to address the issue of small-scale fisheries. And all the rules and guidelines that are in the directives of the FAO will be taken in account in drafting those protocols. So at the moment, as I speak, we have hired a lawyer that is working just on that issue to incorporate the FAO guidelines and some other basically relevant issues in our sub-region into the protocol that will be annexed to the convention on minimal access condition. And that convention will basically harmonize the policies, the fisheries policy and management in our sub-region. So this is how important and timely these directives are for our sub-region.
I represent the Bay of Bengal Program, which is an intergovernmental organization. This intergovernmental organization works in 4 countries on the western side of the Bay of Bengal, and these countries are Bangladesh, India, Maldives and Sri Lanka. And in all these 4 countries, the small scale fisheries constitutes a very important segment of the fisheries sector. We were told yesterday that globally there are about 50 million fishes, and in my 4 countries there are roughly 5 to 6 million small scale fishes, which constitutes almost 10% of the global fishermen population. The small scale fisheries sector is very dynamic. It's a kaleidoscope of people, of fishing boats, of fisheries activities, and it's a very, very powerful sector as far as the contribution to the fisheries is concerned. They not only produce fish, but they contribute immensely to the region's economy, to the export of fish and fish products, which assist in global food security, and also in providing the livelihoods to a large section of people, both in the capture as well as in the post harvest and processing sectors. The international guidelines on securing sustainable small scale fisheries is an important development, and we in the Bay of Bengal region feel that these guidelines would contribute immensely to the sustainable development of small scale fisheries. They would not only raise the profile of this sector, which is very much needed, but they would also provide guidance to the member countries in the sustainable development of the small scale fisheries sector. These guidelines are very comprehensive. They cover almost all the topics that are required for the sustainable development of the sector, and we hope that once these guidelines are approved, finalized, and once they reach the member governments, it would help them immensely in developing their own small scale fisheries sector.
Small scale fisheries, they are very, very important in the Caribbean. In fact, our fisheries in the Caribbean are predominantly small scale fisheries. Well over 97% of the fisheries is small scale fisheries. So they are important from a food and nutrition perspective. They are important for employment. They are important for the economic activity and social activity in our countries. Many, many people depend upon them. They produce approximately 180,000 metric tons of fish each year, a lot of which is consumed locally, even though a small portion is also exported to earn hard currency for our countries. But apart from that, they also employ large numbers of persons. In fact, approximately 175,000 persons are employed directly and indirectly in the fisheries sector. For these reasons, we want to make sure that our small-scale fisheries are properly managed, that we have in place proper governance framework, that we have in place adequate conservation measures. These are indeed very, very important fisheries for us, but they do face major challenges. We face major challenges in terms of long-term sustainable use, ensuring that we have proper management systems in place. We face challenges for improving the profitability and the economic returns from the fisheries. We face challenges with disasters and climate change, etc. These are new and growing challenges and threats to our fisheries. We face challenges to ensure a more market-oriented industry. We face challenges from IUU fishing. So we faced a host of challenges. In fact, IUU fishing seems to be increasing in the Caribbean region, and that's a very serious concern for us. So the basic point in response to your question is these are extremely important fishery resources. They employ a lot of people in the Caribbean, and they provide for food and nutrition security, employment, etc. for many of our people. So indeed, we want to make sure that they are adequately protected, that they are properly managed, and that they are used in a sustainable manner, not only for present generation, but we have to think about intergenerational equity so that we pass on to the future generations stable fisheries so that they themselves can make decent income and have decent standards of living from these fisheries. There's another important point about the small-scale fishery that perhaps I should emphasize. You know, in most of our countries, we do not have social security system. The fisheries sector functions as a default social security system. So many times when we have downturn in our economies, whether it's in agriculture or in tourism, people will move to the fisheries sector where they can usually make a reasonable living, decent living using these fishery resources. They may, when economic activities improve, they may move back to construction or agriculture or other sectors. So that is also a very important role that the fisheries sector plays in the Caribbean region. That is very often overlooked. Well, first of all, I want to commend FAO for its initiative in developing these international guidelines to ensure sustainable use of small-scale fisheries. These are very, very important indeed. In fact, we in the Caribbean, we are very pleased that FAO has made this commitment towards working on these guidelines because, okay, we have the Code of Conduct and we have other international fisheries instruments, but when you look closely at these, you'll realize that these were developed largely with large-scale fisheries in mind. There are some elements, some provisions that are applicable to small-scale fisheries, but by and large, they do not take into account the unique characteristics and peculiarities of small-scale fisheries. Now, the guidelines are being developed as a supplement to the code and to these international instruments available for sustainable development, conservation, and management of fisheries. So we are indeed very pleased by these guidelines. We will be having a regional workshop in the Caribbean in December of this year, a regional workshop, regional consultation to look at these guidelines and to provide our input, provide our comments on these guidelines, and hopefully our concerns can be taken on board at that time. So this is very good for the fisheries sector. You see, our long-term vision for the fisheries sector is that we want to have profitable, we want to have market-oriented, we want to have internationally competitive and sustainable fisheries sector for our people. These guidelines will go a long way in achieving these objectives. So we welcome them wholeheartedly and we look forward to participating in the process. It's a very, very good development.